trying to figure out what. Well, that is just the way the human brain works. We hear something or we see something, and we immediately try to latch hold of it, figure it out, and give it a name. That's what we do. That's the human condition. Well, today is the first Sunday in the season that the church has decided to call Lenten, the Lenten season. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and not that we are, we're not Catholics, we're Unitics, so there's really no reason for any of us to really be interested in this piece. But at the same time, we are interested in seeing it from a metaphysical level. In 1953, one of our co-founders of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, I think I got a picture of him here. I want to show you. See if this works. This is Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Did you know that she didn't cook? So when they built the house out at the Unity Farm, it was called at that time, Unity Village, there's no kitchen in that house because she didn't cook, so they didn't need one. So what they did is every day they walked over to Charles's mother's house, and she cooked for them until she passed away. By then, they had built a Unity cafeteria, which was one of the first vegetarian cafeterias in the Kansas City area, and that's one of the firsts that they had. Also, there's many others, but I'm digressing at the moment. They were writers of books. How to Let God Help You is one of the ones that Myrtle Fillmore wrote. It's all about prayer, and many others that they wrote. He wrote one that was first printed, published in 1953. That wasn't that long ago. That was only 71 years ago, but it doesn't seem long to me because I'm older than that. But I happen to own a first printing of that book, and I'm just real lucky. I found it at a garage sale in the Kansas City area when I was going to school there, and I bought it for a dime, and it turns out it's first edition. The only thing about it is that it was well used. It is marked up by the original owner, and she really, really, really studied the Unity message, especially this book called Keep a True Lent. So I want to read a little bit about what was originally written about that in the foreword. So I'm sorry about just reading, but I think it's very important for all of us to hear this. And it's best to hear it directly from the person who wrote the foreword. The person who wrote, I'm not going to read it all because it's very long. Georgiana Tree West. She was one of the people who worked there in the Unity prayer room for years and years and years, most of her life. And she wrote books as well. And she wrote the foreword to this book. It starts off, it says, the Christian world is once again observing the Lenten season, the season of prayer and fasting that precedes the joyous festivity of Easter. It is commonly believed that the Lenten period has to do with the events of the 40 days preceding the resurrection. That's what I thought. This is an erroneous idea. Lent is a church institution, and there is no authorization for it anywhere in the New Testament. The idea, however, has a sound spiritual basis. Moses, Elijah, and Jesus himself set a precedent for it. Each observed a 40-day period of prayer and fasting as a preparation for spiritual work. Moses received the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai at the conclusion of his fast. Elijah talked with God on Mount Horeb at the conclusion of his period of prayer and fasting. Jesus began his great spiritual ministry at the close of his fast in the wilderness. The ancient Hebrew writers made a practice of using numbers to symbolize ideas. 40, in their minds, was a four-square number, suggesting the idea of a foundation for something to follow. An idea of completeness. And we talked about that many times in classes and so forth, that the number 40 represents as long as it takes. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Well, it rained as long as it took to get to this situation. He fasted for 40 days. Well, he fasted or she fasted as long as the fasting period took. So the number 40 is frequently used in the scriptures to indicate a completed preparation for something to follow. When we consider Lent as a well-rounded or completed season of retreat from the things of the world for the cleansing of the mind and the recollection of the things of spirit, it becomes a true season of preparation for the glorious Easter tide, a preparation for the resurrection of the mind from the darkness of its sins, doubts, and false beliefs into the light of understanding, mentally and physically. Then it goes on and she reads some more about it. I want to read you the last portion, because this is very important in the time that we are in right now, when we are in a time of, I think, wars and rumors of wars. She wrote this, just remembered, in 1953. So the Korean War was probably just right there, getting ready to happen or happening already. And there had been much in the way of people wanting to pull away and say America first and so forth, and that had to start in the 1930s and had gone on for quite some time. She writes this: one of the most valuable ways of observing this particular Lenten season is to fast from, loose and let go, the belief that men or nations can stand in the way of God's goodwill for man. Now is the time to affirm the power of the Christ Spirit indwelling in all men everywhere and influencing their thoughts, words, and actions to work for the good of the whole. We all want to be some influence in establishing world peace. To do so, we must learn to obey Paul's exhortation. Let us therefore follow after the things which make for peace. Each one of us must be concerned with improving his own life. We must learn to deny our selfish impulses and be obedient to impulses of brotherly love. When we withdraw our attention and our interest and support from the false and the unworthy, this is true fasting. When we give that same attention, interest, and support to the enduring good, we are feasting upon the things of spirit, and this is true prayer. When we have truly fasted in the Christ way, we have increased our ability to respond to God's good will. Written so long ago, but so apt, even for our day today. So apt. 70, 71 years later. Somewhere in there. Okay. As we know, Lent began right after Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, then came Ash Wednesday, and that expression comes from the old church's way of marking those who were in this Lent season. And to mark this, they would take ashes and place it upon the person's face, make a cross upon their forehead, or they would rub it on their clothing to let the world outside know, I am in a special place right now. I am in fasting, or I am doing something to celebrate or to commemorate the season of Lent. Okay, having said that, Let's talk a moment about what Lent actually comes from. A little more. I like to do this. I like to go through the history of things. The word Lent comes from the Anglo-Saxon word for spring, which is derived from a verb meaning to lengthen. I didn't know that. I don't know if any of you knew that or were aware of it or had known it and forgotten it or what it might be. Lent comes from, and a lot of people pronounce the word length. They pronounce it length. And that's pretty spot on, actually, to think about it that way. Lent comes in the spring when days are becoming longer. This annual season of fasting and prayer and penitence has been observed by the Western Church since the 1st century after the Christ, although it has not always been 40 days long. In more recent times, it has been kept to 40 days after the example of Moses and Elijah and so forth. That's where that comes from. Then it talks about the different ones, the 40 days following Ash Wednesday constitute Lent. And I'm reading now from Charles Fillmore's book, Keep a True Lent. Because his belief is that, just saying, well, I'm going to forego kumquats, or I'm no longer going to eat watermelon, or I will eat fish on Friday, or whatever it might be. I observe that one, eating fish on Friday, because I like fish. So I eat fish on that day. And during this season, every fast food joint in the world has some kind of fish sandwich going on right now. And that's why, because they are trying to provide it and they know that people will come forward and eat fish, whereas at other times of the year, they may not. But Natasha and I both are fish eating people, so we like fish. Okay, so we're happy about that. Then it talks about the different things that we have heard about, and I think this might be interesting to you. The Thursday before Easter is called Maundy Thursday. Maundy, Maundy Thursday. Why is it called that? What a strange term. I often wondered what it is, and here it was right before me. As a Unity minister, I could have picked up this little book and learned it at any time I wanted. Here it is. It's a corruption of the Latin word mandati, meaning of the commandment, and refers to the command, this do in remembrance of me. This do in remembrance of me, spoken by Jesus, breaking the bread and drinking the wine at the Last Supper. Maundy Thursday commemorates the event of the Last Supper. I didn't know that. Wasn't paying attention. So now we all know it together. Good Friday, the Friday before Easter, originally was probably known as God's Friday instead of Good Friday. And it commemorates the crucifixion of Jesus on that day. Easter Day, of course, commemorates the resurrection, and the word Easter comes from the Anglo-Saxon word Istre, the name of the goddess of spring. And there was a festival in her honor, as we well know about Istre, and it's spelled Eastre. That's an old Anglo-Saxon word. But it goes even back further than that, because there was Ishtar and the other names as well that go clear back into the histories of many of the ancient civilizations who had this same belief of a goddess, because they believed that life came from women, the goddess who would bring life once again all over the world. That's where we get the idea, and there are statues of Ishtar wearing a robe covered in eggs. And that's where we get the idea of the Easter egg right there. And she's holding in her arms little rabbits. And that's where we get the idea of the Easter bunny. That's just amazing, isn't it? That all these little things fell together. to form Here Comes Peter Cottontail hopping down the bunny trail. Okay. By the way, does anybody remember who sang that song on record? Gene Autry. Long ago. Okay. Lenten season is a time of spiritual growth, a time of where we can let go of those things which are physical and simply physical mind even, and change all of that. Change all of that for the better, which then stays changed once we actually practice it and accept it and hold on to it. Now, Charles Fillmore decided to give different names to the days of Lent. Most of them were things that he gave, which were the 12 powers of unity and so forth, and he named them all through. And then there were other things, and each one was a great. Pardon my nose there. Was a great idea to hang on to these days, each one, and to hang on to these ideas that they represent as well. So here we are. And it so happens that this year it aligns perfectly with 1953 when he published this book. So all the days are in perfect order. The Tuesday before, the Wednesday beginning of it, and so forth. And so here we are on the first Sunday of this, and it says, read Matthew 5:21-26. Well, I'm just going to read part of it. It says in the 23rd, in Matthew 5:23, so when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. In other words, there's a cloud hanging over this. There's a cloud hanging over this gift, and before this gift is acceptable through you and by you, it's best to go and reconcile those things which are getting in the way of this being a true gift. It often is something like this. We see in the church today, and we see outside the church today, we see it all over the place, the idea that people are doing good when actually all they're doing is assuaging their egos. That's all that's really going on. It's not a gift that is left at the altar of consciousness in a clean and pure way. There's always something in it for the giver. And so something needs to be changed in that so that humility is added in there, and the idea that Jesus and the Gospels proclaimed when they said that the man came and offered his gift, pounded on his chest and said, God, forgive me as a sinner. Forgive me for being one who doesn't do right and do things according to spirit all the time. Because I am guilty of this and not doing this, I am aware of it. And Jesus says his gift is more important than any of these who make loud and gestures of how they are giving. Oh, look at me, I'm a big giver. When actually they should be like this man who humbly gives his gift quietly with his hand to his chest. Here's what happens on this, that Charles Fillmore reads. The first Sunday is dedicated to the idea of the altar. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment, right now, as we read what Charles Fillmore wrote back then. The first Sunday. The altar represents a fixed, definite center in the consciousness of man. And by the way, I just want to say, I'm sure it's been occurring to you as it did to me as I read it, that this was written in 1953, and this was accepted in that time, that when one wrote man, it included all human beings, not just men. That was just the way it was done back then. That's the way it was done. That's the way probably most of us were raised. They mean women when they say men. Well, now we don't do it that way anymore, which is probably an improvement. Probably it is an improvement. I know it is an improvement. Okay, going on to that. The altar represents a fixed, definite center in the consciousness of man. It is a place within where we meet the Lord face to face and are willing to give up our sins. Remember, sin simply means missing the mark. Give up our sins, give up the lower for the higher, the personal for the impersonal, the animal for the divine. You've all heard me probably describe ourselves right now where we are in our conscious development as we are humanimals. That's the way I view us, humanimals. We're not quite there, but we're not back the other way. The altar mentioned in Revelation 11:1 symbolizes the consciousness of full consecration that takes place in the temple of worship. And where's that temple of worship where it takes place? The body, our very own body within ourselves. Present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service. Each of our spiritual service is to present our bodies as a living sacrifice. Here I am, God, do with me as needs to be done, not only for your glory, but for my cleansing. My cleansing. The altar to the unknown God is a yearning to know the unrevealed Spirit, a reaching out of the mind for a fuller realization of its source. Fuller realization of your own mind's source. That's what we're looking for, each of us. And it's a yearning within us, a desire. This is one we've all heard and didn't realize where it came from, and here it is. Prayer does not change God. It changes us. Sincere desire is a form of prayer. Deep desire is essential for spiritual growth. It is desire, earnest, intense desire, that draws the whole being up out of mortality and its transient joys and into the power to appreciate and receive real spiritual blessings. Now let's unpack that for just a moment. Prayer changes us, not God. Deep desire is essential for spiritual growth. We can't just say, yeah, pray. It doesn't work that way. It has to be something deeper within us that comes from the real us, not from anything else. It draws the whole being up out of mortality, and its transient joys. Mortality has transient joys. They come and they go. Happy one minute, next minute, that same thing that gave us happiness is just meh. So we move on to the next thing, always looking, always searching. And that's what I was talking about Neil having that little conversation there. My mind is always searching, always looking. All of our minds do this all the time. This is the nature of the humanimal. This is the nature of being human. And the joys that we experience are transient. They come and they go. And we want to be changed that into the power to appreciate and receive real spiritual blessings. Real spiritual blessings. Not the ones we just give a label to. Not the ones we're just going through our little Rolodex in our mind trying to say, okay, what am I going to call this? What am I going to call that? Change all of that into a real acceptance and a real understanding, a real being of what it all is about, and receive real spiritual blessings. This is a demonstration, the proving of a truth principle in one's body and affairs. It is the manifestation of an ideal when its accomplishment has been brought about by one's conformity in thought, word, and action to the creative principle of God. In other words, through our thoughts, words, and deeds, we can manifest God. We can manifest pure spirit within and of ourselves. Now, this is not something that the ego wants to let slide by. It wants to grab hold of that and say, I can do it all by myself. Only I can change it all. When in the truth, that's just not what's going on. This already going on in spirit all along and all around us. It's a matter of us getting on board fully within our mind, heart, soul, every fiber of our being. Kneeling at the altar, I take my statement of truth and hold it steadily in mind until I get my realization. The logic of my mind is satisfied. And there is the lifting up and expanding of soul consciousness. We actually expand. We change. We are conformed, not by the world, but by pure spirit, living in us, through us, as us. To this end, I affirm, it is not I, but the Father within, doing the works. That's what's going on today in Lent, according to Charles Fillmore, 71 years ago. Each day he labeled in his book the Lenten lessons. The one for tomorrow will be called the Garden of Eden. The next one is faith. And then we get into the 12 powers. Strength on the 7th day. Wisdom. Love. Power. And then we fall with imagination on the 2nd Sunday. Now, I would love to be able to just have a broadcast and just go through every one of these, but I can't, or I'm not able to do it at this given moment. What's wonderful about this and what I encourage you to do is, if you can, get a copy of this little book. This little book right here. Look how simple it was written. Oh, it's backwards, I think. Oops, where'd it go? Whoops, I'm having some issues here. Keep a true Lent. Or, it didn't say that, did it? But anyway, it was backwards, but that's okay. You get the idea. Keep a true Lent. Keep a true Lent. It's still available. It's available online, and it's available in the Unity bookstores. It's available in many places. Many of you, I'm sure, already have the book, and I urge you, if you do have it, pick it back up right now in this Lenten season. We're only into it for 1 week, less than 1 week. Isn't it wonderful that we have in unity a way of looking at something as traditional as this idea that's been going on for these 2,000 years, almost 1,900 years, somewhat right around that idea, that the old original Catholic Church took up, the Roman Catholic Church took up. They took up this idea, and it was immediately bastardized, and it was immediately changed into some way of control for the church and control for the government. But other than that, put that aside and just say that it is a wonderful idea, this lengthening of days season, Lent, taking that idea, taking that mandate, do this in remembrance of me, adding to it whatever we want to add, and then going within our own minds and willingly, easily giving up, putting aside anything which is less than spiritual. Doing that for any amount of time that we can in every day, for this time all the way up to the time of Easter. What will happen is we will not be the same people. We will be transformed. Be not conformed, but be transformed. Transform yourself. Not waiting for somebody else to do it to you or through you or for you, but doing it yourself. You will become a different person, and your spiritual abilities will then be available to attune with others of the same abilities. And the growth of peace, the growth of prosperity, the growth of true loving brother and sisterhood will start manifesting even greater in this world. Now, I'm not the first one to say these things, and fortunately, I won't be the last. God bless all of you.